From the News Channel 5 network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. For only the fourth time in U.S. history, a president is on trial in the U.S. Senate after being impeached by the House. It's a record second time for former President Donald Trump. This time he faces possible conviction for an insurrection, encouraging an angry mob to march on the Capitol, where they then sacked the building and in a deadly assault to try to stop the certification of the 2020 election, which Mr. Trump lost. How's the trial gone so far? With no impeached president having ever been convicted by the Senate, what's the likely verdict this time? And what will that mean for our two political parties and the polarization that so deeply divides our nation? To gain some insights and wisdom and seeking those answers to those questions, we welcome back Dr. John Weil of Middle Tennessee State University, where he is a longtime political science professor and the Dean of the Honors College. Dr. Weil, thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's always great to have you back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before the trial ever started, the Senate has now voted twice to basically say that having an impeachment trial of a former president is constitutionally legal, yet you continue to hear Republicans who have enough votes to stop a conviction to say that's still what they don't like about this. Even despite those votes, is that likely the most likely reason the Senate will not convict President Trump on this?
I think it's probably the most likely thing people will say. I think it's really cover for something else. He was, after all, impeached while he was still president. And had the Senate gone immediately into a trial, there would have undoubtedly been outcries, justifiable in my view, that they had not given the president sufficient time to mount a defense.
The president's lawyers had a chance to argue the first day about the constitutionality. They did not go over very well. They were sort of universally panned. On the other side, the House managers have gotten rave reviews even from some Republican senators about the job that they have done. But does it really matter what these arguments are? Don't we already kind of know how this is going to turn out, and what they argue and how they argue doesn't matter all that much?
Sadly, that's probably true. You know, they're taking an oath to be objective and to apply the Constitution, but I think many of them are less concerned about the Constitution than they are about their immediate prospects for election and whether or not they might hurt Trump's feelings and lose a few of his supporters.
We're doing this interview before the president's lawyers get a chance to make their defense on Friday. So after their disastrous first presentations, what will they do differently? What will they talk about to make a difference? We hear they say less is more. Does that, they're not going to use all their time, they say. Does that mean we've got this one, the votes are there not to convict, so don't screw it up by talking too much?
I think that's probably part of it. You know, there's speculation that they are going to go back to the question that has already been resolved by a majority, namely whether it's proper to impeach a president who's left office. The one thing that I think the other thing that they might be doing is actually showing some videos of their own. I'm assuming that what they would do is try to pick out the parts of Trump's speech where he urged people to proceed peacefully, but I'm not sure of that.
Do average voters care about this impeachment? Are they paying attention? Do they care which way it goes? They're just ready to put it behind them?
You know, I think there is, a lot of sentiment that the election is over, disputed as it was, it's now settled. A lot of one of Trump's main defenses is that people have hated him from the beginning. This is just more of the same. It's not a sentiment, by the way, that I share. I believe that the events that happened in the Capitol are really signally, unique in American history. I don't think we've ever had a president. We've had presidents who've disputed electoral votes with one or another states, but we've never had a president in the face of 60 some court cases who continues to tell his followers that he's won. And a great contrast would be Al Gore of Tennessee, who as soon as the Supreme Court made a decision said, I don't agree with the decision, but it's law of the land. Time to move on.
The House managers basically say accountability is important. They say that if Donald Trump isn't convicted, he might then decide, be emboldened to do even more outrageous things. Do you think there's some credibility in that?
Well, that was an argument that came up in the first impeachment, and it looks like Senator Collins of Maine, she was one of the main ones who argued that she thought the impeachment was enough he would be sufficiently chastened that we didn't have to worry about this behavior again. And instead, if anything, it seems to have emboldened him.
On the other hand, if he is convicted, aren't the Democrats making Donald Trump a political martyr? And whether he can run again for office or not, he will continue to be a major political force?
Well, I mean, by the force of his personality, he's likely to be a major force, for a while. Now, he's no longer on Twitter. In some ways, I think had he been permitted to be on Twitter for the past 3 or 4 weeks, that there may be greater sentiment against him than there is right now. Who knows what he might have said during some of these presentations.
This impeachment looks like it's going to be over fairly quickly, either this weekend or certainly early next week. Any chance are going to be witnesses called? We haven't heard about that yet.
I don't know whether they will be or not. I would certainly like to see, 2 sets of witnesses. One would be people who were actually there, and we've seen it on video, but people who would say, I was there at Trump's bidding and did what he thought. But the other thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see someone inside the White House telling us what, in fact, Trump's reactions were. What we're getting from the media is, and he wasn't like Nero, to my knowledge. He didn't have a fiddle with him, but he seems to have been dancing a jig, and really delighted as this was happening.
What if this impeachment trial was being held with a secret ballot involved, not a public roll call vote, which is what will happen when they make the decision? Do you think the decision might be very different? And what if it had been held much more quickly? I think, as you mentioned earlier, the days after it happened, do you think we'd had a larger vote to impeach in the House and maybe a much different vote in the Senate on conviction?
I don't know. Again, had you proceeded that quickly, there would always be charges that, that was a rush to judgment. We didn't, and we have found out significant new things in the last 3 weeks or so. As to the secret ballot, many people believe that the reason that Liz Cheney survived, as a House leader, voted what she said was her conscience in voting to impeach Trump. Many people think that, had the ballot not been secret, that she could possibly have been removed from leadership. So I suspect the vote, I doubt that it would be a 2/3 vote for impeachment, even with the secret ballot, but I suspect that there would probably be more than the possible 55 or 56 that are currently anticipated. Dr.
John Wildman of the State University political science professor is our guest. We're talking about the impeachment trial going on this week in Washington. Back to continue our conversation after this break.